The Downtown Rams podcast is brought to you today by Draft. Looking for the best fantasy sports site on the planet? Sign up with Draft today. For a limited time only, our listeners will receive $3 matching their first deposit of at least $10. Use promo code DTR or visit draft.com/DTR to sign up now. Draft. Fantasy for the people. Now enjoy the show.
Caught by Brandon Cooks. Shoot your arrows. Cooper Kupp plucks it out of the air and gives the Rams the lead. Robert Wood, touchdown. LA. Goff goes crashing into the end zone. Aaron Donald almost beat the football there. Corey Littleton, have yourself a day. Picked off. Marcus Peters coming off the edge. And Ryan will be wrapped up by Clay Matthews. Everett in stride. Wow.
Franklin Myers gets his hand down there.
Leto got a hand on it. Did he pick it? He did! Racing down the sideline is a key to lead. Gurley for MVP! Touchdown LA! Picked off by John Johnson. Well, it's Dante Fowler who is able to get to Breeze. Greg Zuerlein sends the Rams to the Super Bowl! LA will play for the Lombardi!
Welcome back, guys, to another Downtown Rams podcast. It's episode 245. I'm your host, Jake Ellenboga. Joining me is Alexis Kraft. And we're coming off a loss. So this is going to be a different type of tone. This is not your invincible Rams anymore. So we will be talking about them in all facets of their game. Before we do, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And welcome to the show. We're going to start off with a new little segment. I guess we can call it DTR Mailbag. I mean, I didn't even think of a segment name, but we want to start engaging the audience more that listens. So we asked a bunch of people on social media to send us your questions because this is a very controversial game. It upset a lot of people, and we have plenty to talk about. So I'm going to have Alexis read off the questions and we'll go through them, answer them, and then we'll continue on with the rest of the show.
Yeah, so just to start off, I'm just going to pull up our Instagram here. We got a lot of questions on our post on Instagram. So just going to kind of start off with, a question here, a very broad question from GJB39. He asked us, what went wrong? And I'll give a quick answer here real quick because we are going to dive more into it both through questions and through commentary later. But basically, GJB39, pretty much everything that could go wrong went wrong at some point in the game. There was no offensive or defensive consistency. There was a lot of lack of awareness, specifically in the offensive side of the ball. We had an O-line that folded after a second on almost every single play, and we had a defense that our secondary just didn't know what was going on. So did you have anything to add to that, Jake, for just a quick what went wrong?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much if you answered everything went wrong except for the receivers, that's a fine answer for me. I think the receivers deserve an A+ in this game. I thought that they got open consistently, and I obviously, Goff missed plenty of throws. It just pretty much everything went wrong that could have gone wrong, and it was very similar to the Saints game when the Rams lost 45-35 last year. It just seemed like the defense just couldn't help the Rams out. And when, the Rams would score, the defense would, give up another touchdown. And, when the defense would finally get a rare stop, the offense would, get stifled. So it just wasn't one of those. It was a weird game at the Coliseum. But yeah, I agree to your point. It just seemed like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, we'll get into it later, but hopefully that was a pretty well generically answered question or answer to that question. The next question is from Dave62625, and he asked us, where was our D in this game? Jake, you want to answer that first?
Not there. It was
in outer space.
Definitely hard to watch. I mean, I think they were still in Cleveland, to be quite honest. but I don't know. I mean, it was definitely it was really concerning. It was really frustrating. But it hurt a lot because you saw, okay, this is the Rams team this year. It looks like they're going to be a defensive team and their offense is finally going to get going. And you would have to imagine that combination would lead to, a really successful season. But now you're sitting here in week 4, like, where did this defensive, this abysmal defensive performance come from? And, what is next? So, I don't know where the defense was. I mean, I have no idea. That was just absolutely bizarre. I mean, I did say on our show before the game that Chris Godwin is very, very good. And, he might even be better than Evans, unpopular opinion, but he ripped the Rams in half. Ronald Jones was back in the Coliseum, but really, no one thought Jameis Winston, a guy that many, Buccaneers fans have been, clamoring to, get benched. And I mean, it's not like there's really anybody there right now. Arians didn't draft anybody and they committed to him this year, but Jameis Winston threw 385 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, where did that come from? He's fully capable of it. He's always had the talent, but yeah, I don't know where the defense was, but wherever they were, they weren't at the Coliseum.
Yeah, I would say when Dave is asking where was our D in this game, what comes to my mind is the secondary, because I didn't think that our defensive line necessarily was non-existent. They definitely didn't have the success that I thought they were going to have on Tampa Bay. I mean, I was thinking, like, my prediction was Aaron Donald was going to get at least 2 sacks. I thought that they were going to go to town on Tampa Bay's offensive line. They definitely didn't do that, but I didn't think that they completely dropped the ball there. What was concerning to me was the Rams linebacking core and the secondary especially did not seem to be very aware of what was going on, just leaving guys open. Silly mistakes like that you could even argue are almost mental mistakes. But like you said, it's bizarre because this is a defense that typically doesn't do that. So that's why it was so bizarre to watch. But the next question is from I Collect Rocks on Instagram, and they asked us, how bad was the injury to Rapp? And I don't think it was bad, Jake. I mean, I haven't heard anything else on it. Have you?
I thought it looked pretty bad. It looked like an ankle, and I was a little worried about him, but I haven't heard any reports of anything today. I mean, it just seems like he's day to day. So, I mean, he was carted off with an ankle injury, but I think him being day to day is really a good sign that he might have dodged a bullet, just like Blythe and Higbee. And it seems crazy because Higbee was coughing up blood, and Blythe, I mean, that we saw that in person. I mean, that looked like he was out for the year. And, I guess if you could take anything away from this game is that Rapp, who has played a ton of snaps as the dime backer, he's day to day. It could end up being worse, but right now that is not a bad that's not a bad thing. And I would have expected more from somebody that got carted off the field during the game than what they've handed out. And we haven't gotten anything. So that's normally a good sign.
Right. So this next question is kind of a question and a statement in one. I'm going to read it and then we can kind of give our thoughts on if we agree or disagree with this. But J_C_D said on Instagram, why are we playing soft zone coverage on 3rd and 5? ? I know MP isn't a great man corner and Talib isn't as great as he was, but it seems like we are always willing to give up the 6-yard easy completions even in predictable passing situations. Both offensive and defensive lines got pretty much dominated for most of the game. Our offense was working well when we went to a faster tempo. Also, play action doesn't work if you only run the ball 7 times the entire game. It's kind of a lot to digest there. Do you want me to take this first, or do you want to answer it?
I mean, the way it's worded is kind of how I am every time I'm watching the Rams. This year it seems like it's even when the defense is playing lights out. Why are we in soft zone? I hate soft zone. I get you're not really as equipped to play man, but I mean, he has every reason to have an issue with that. I mean, like on 3rd and 11, why are there guys 5 yards, off the ball? And I mean, it's a constant thing. And that's the thing. Tampa Bay is just going to pick you apart because Bruce Arians has played against the Rams before. It's nothing new. He used to coach the Arizona Cardinals, and he picked them apart with Chris Godwin. I mean, Godwin had 12 catches for 172 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a lot of that was because of how soft they played him in coverage. And then the last one, how can you expect if your offense is predicated off the play action pass, how can you expect to run your true offense if you can't get the play action going because you don't run the football? I mean, just 11 carries all game long. I do not have words for that in a game that was, still, close at the beginning. I mean, they let it get to, 21-0 and they barely ran the football. To me, Sean McVay has plenty of blame, as well as, some of the individual players and, position groups.
Right. I definitely agree with what you said there. And, now that I think that you had 2 questions real quick before we get into it, right? 2 last minute.
Well, do you have more or?
No, that was it.
Okay.
The rest, we had a ton of comments, I should say. We did get a lot of great feedback on our Instagram, but as far as questions go, those were the ones that we're covering.
Yeah, match 328. What do you think about the Rams trading for left tackle Trent Williams of the Redskins? Whitworth and Robb have looked very bad so far, so why not add a young Pro Bowl left tackle? Well, he's not young. It's a good question. Why not, kick the tires on him? He's definitely not young. He was drafted in the same draft class as Sam Bradford. So, he's in his 30s. He's not quite, 37 like Whitworth, I'm just going to say this right now, address the elephant in the room. Whitworth has an excuse for his play. He is officially starting to really feel it. The age is starting to hit him. I will say that. Rob Havenstein, there is no reason why Rob Havenstein should be your weak link. Everyone wants to blame it on the kids, right? They want to blame it on what they don't have. There's no Saffold. Well, how is no Saffold impacting the right side of the line? Because for my money, Blythe and Havenstein were there last year, and Havenstein looked absolutely abysmal. And albeit, you have Shaq Barrett, who they were moving around, the defensive line and trying to get him opportunities, one-on-ones and everything. And, he's probably the most feared pass rusher this year. But that's no excuse for a guy that you just locked up long-term. 2nd-round pick. Havenstein's been there. He's not old. He's in his prime. You can't have these games from him. That sack was entirely on Havenstein. The sack that forced, Jared Goff, the fumble. I mean, that's not on Goff. As much as you want to say, put the load on Jared Goff, that was not one of those instances. He had no time to throw. And obviously you'd like to see him not fumble the ball to have a chance to win the game. But I mean, he's trying to make a play. He's trying to get the ball out, and Havenstein gave him 0 opportunity. So you know what? I actually wouldn't be against, and I said this on the Facebook Live, I would not be against the Rams throwing their 1st rounder at a guy that they feel could make a difference. Maybe you move Rob Havenstein to right guard. People can laugh at me for that, but initially, Cromer had Jamon Brown at right tackle and Rob Havenstein as right guard when he came in. Now that ended up changing, but it's something to keep in mind. They might be able to move Havenstein to guard if they were to acquire Trent Williams, and maybe you do some shuffling there. You move Witt to right, or you move Trent Williams to right. But I honestly wouldn't be opposed to it. And if anything, you might be, you might be gaining something for your team, but also taking away something from someone else that needs a left tackle that could compete with you in the long run. So I actually like that. And then the other question was, what do you think about trading for Ramsey and letting Peters walk? I know Marcus had pick 6, but he gets burned way too easily by the elite wide receiver in the NFL. He's not worth top cornerback money. Here's what I'll say right now. If you look at the Rams defense, Marcus Peters is the highest ranked Ram on Pro Football Focus for defense. Not Aaron Donald, not Dante Fowler, not John Johnson. It's Marcus Peters. And I think he gets such a bad rep, because there will be those instances where he gets absolutely burned. That play with Mike Evans, if you're, going with that, I mean, you could tell he was animated from the get-go. He clearly thought somebody was back there to help him. And why there wasn't a safety over the top to help is beyond me. And I just thought it was a poor play design. I thought it was a poor play call. And I don't blame that on Marcus Peters at all, because he's playing exactly how he expects the play to turn out. He thought he had help over the top, and he didn't. And so then it makes him look bad. But, I mean, that's not on him. So he was barking at the secondary like there was somebody clearly not playing. There was somebody not in their, their role, and that, caused a busted coverage. I want to get your thoughts on all this, Alexis, because those are the two questions. And again, they're both from Match 328. Thanks so much for putting questions out there, man. Do appreciate. Go follow him on Twitter. But I do want to get your thoughts on that, because trades are always really iffy. As you can see, I am more okay with trading for an offensive lineman than a cornerback. I think this was kind of just one of those weird games for the secondary and for just the defense, and they'll back it up. Whereas the offensive line, as you've said, I mean, this is a legit concern for a team that should be playing in a Super Bowl by the end of the year.
Yeah. So as far as the quarterback situation goes, I'm not really willing to make any changes as of now in the secondary. As far as the offensive line goes, and the question, involving trading for Trent Williams, that is intriguing to me. I think I would only be comfortable with that, though, if we didn't have to give up too much for him, which I think the Redskins definitely would want a lot for, Trent Williams. So that's something that I wouldn't be mad about if it happened, but I just don't think it will because of how much the Redskins are asking for him. But now that we finished the questions, I want to use that segue from the offensive line to now you and I are going to go into our breakdown of the game. And I want to start with the offensive line, because this is something that in preseason, I know I did, and I believe you did as well. We said that we were not happy with our offensive line. They scared us, and we weren't really sure what was going to happen with them going into the season. We said that games 1, 2, 3, and 4 preseason. We went into week 1, 2, 3, now 4 of the regular season, and we again are saying that we are not happy with our offensive line. Now, let me make something clear. The way that our offensive line played in week 4 against the Bucs was the worst performance of the year. They were not absolutely horrendous in weeks 1, 2, and 3. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they're the worst O-line in football, whatever. I'm not trying to be super dramatic, but I'm saying, and what we've been saying, is that this offensive line is just not it. Something isn't clicking in there. There's a few people that aren't clicking. We saw, Andrew Whitworth play poorly yesterday, which is something that is kind of shocking to see from him. You said Havenstein has not been doing well all year. We saw that. And then our interior offensive line is also really worrisome. And this was my biggest concern going into the season, because I just felt if the offensive line cannot keep it together, I worry about Jared Goff, because Jared Goff so far in his career has been relatively lucky in the fact that he has had a really good offensive line in front of him. He hasn't had to deal with many situations where he is panicking and people are coming at him because his offensive line is collapsing in a second, and he's not used to that, which in turn makes Jared Goff perform poorly. Because I think, with experience, a quarterback with experience has the experience to understand how to play better, I think, under pressure, and how to not make bad decisions when you panic. Jared Goff hasn't had to deal with that yet. So he is now, because this offensive line is collapsing, and I'm not saying that all of his issues this season are on the offensive line. I'm saying this is just part of Jared Goff's issue this season. But a big part is that this offensive line is folding in about 2 to 3 seconds. And Jared Goff is not used to that happening. And I think he has the ability to perform well under pressure, but I just think he hasn't had to do it enough. And now that he is starting to kind of be introduced to that, I don't think he's handling all that well. Because you saw parts of the game, actually, where Jared Goff was super consistent under pressure. It was really weird because it was like he kind of got used to it, and then he got in the rhythm, and then he was throwing dimes, but then he only kept it up for so long. And then again, it just started to bother him again towards the end of the game. So I don't really know what happened there. But this offensive line is something that really, really needs to be addressed. I'll get your thoughts on the offensive line, and then I think we should go into Jared Goff.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the thing that scares me is I don't know how much better you can make your offensive line at this point. And this kind of goes to my first, issue with the draft. When we were talking about this, Bobby Evans did not make much sense in our opinion because he wasn't somebody that could contribute this year, and he wasn't a third-round talent in our mind. You're looking at these guys around the league and, guys that we really liked. Dalton Reisner is going to end up being one of the best guards in football, and he could play tackle. And, the Broncos were able to get him, late in the second. There's just so many guys like that. Eric McCoy, he's with the Saints. That's a game changer because they lost Max Unger to retirement. And, he's one of the better young centers in the game, or at least so far. And then, you have guys like Elgton Jenkins. And, it's frustrating because at this point, you're in a little bit of a rut because, you are banking on Brian Allen and Joseph Noteboom to get better. And if they don't, you're in it for the long haul, at least this year. I think, the biggest thing is if you were to trade for somebody, who would you trade for? And I think Trent Williams makes a lot of sense due to the familiarity with Sean McVay, playing in Washington. I do think there's a little bit of a rift there because, obviously he hasn't signed and he's holding out, and there's a question mark how much in game shape he will be. Of course, Sean McVay is really good friends with Bruce Allen. He's really good friends with that whole organization. It sounds like they left on great terms. So I don't know if he would make a trade like that in a sense to kind of spite them. But I mean, in my mind, like, he's probably the only one. And then you kind of get into these guys where you try and fix them. And I don't know if you can afford to take on a project, but Forrest Lamp is somebody, that I would definitely be interested in with the Chargers because he is not starting. And, he's a former second-round pick. I really liked him a lot. Can play guard, can play tackle, kind of like in the same mold of Dalton Reisner and, Isaiah Wynn, that guard tackle guy that can play both. And I think he could be something. I think really Blythe has shown you that you probably can't bring him back. There hasn't been much improvement at all. He's not the Blythe that you saw the first 11 games last year. He's the Blythe that you saw when he took a nosedive in production. Habenstein is actually terrifying me in a sense because it looks like he's regressed. Brian Allen and Joseph Noteboom, again, they've only played 4 games thus far, and albeit I don't think they've been great, but you can't just pull the plug on that. And Whitworth is getting up there in age. So, like, what do you do? I think the best opportunity, the best suggestion at this point would be to trade a first rounder for Trent Williams. And maybe you only have to give up a second rounder, but you trade a first rounder or second rounder for Trent Williams, and then you throw him in to either left tackle or right tackle, and you move Havenstein at guard. And, then Blythe becomes a backup, because right now, I just don't know if this offensive line is going to be able to protect Jared Goff. And, honestly, if Jared Goff played the game like Tom Brady, in the sense like he can get rid of the ball instantly, then I wouldn't be as worried. But Jared has not really done a great job of getting the ball out quickly. There have been a lot of times where he's held on way too long. And, if that's the case, this offensive line is going to be just the worst idea to protect him, and they're going to have to figure it out, because, before you complain about trading a pick, just realize this team is worth it. This is a Super Bowl team, and if their, biggest need is offensive line, it's best to go out there and try and win a Super Bowl this year, and have a piece that maybe is a short-term option, then sit here, ride this out, and have this completely blow up in your face and ruin your season.
Right. Yeah, I think the offensive line is, you use the word for Havenstein as terrifying. I'll use it for our whole offensive line, essentially, at this point. I just don't think anybody's performing as well as they need to be. I think next year, round one, I've already got my position locked down of who I want the Rams to target in the first round. And that's literally any position on the offensive line, because next year in the 2020 NFL draft is actually a very rich offensive line draft. From everything that I've been watching and seeing, especially out of Iowa alone, there's about 3 or 4 guys who, in my opinion, could be first or second round talent that, I think we should be keeping an eye on. But that's, for a different podcast. But now that we kind of talked about the offensive line, I want to get into Jared Goff. And before I get into Jared Goff, I have to make something clear, because from week 1 of this regular season, I have expressed that I have not been thrilled with what I had been seeing from Jared Goff, and people were really, 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 really upset about it, because I think people are missing something. Now, I love Jared Goff. I believe in Jared Goff. I still think he's our franchise quarterback, but as a fan, and Jake, you said this as well before, as a fan, you have a vested interest in who is on your team, and you have every right to express your concern or your questions about the performance of a certain player. People do it all the time. Look at every single NFL franchise. When fans are unhappy with the way a player is playing, they voice it. They're not voicing it because they hate that player. They're voicing it because they're concerned, because they want their team to win, and they're seeing things that are preventing their team from winning. And right now, a big part of the equation is Jared Goff. Now, people are going to say, calm down. We're 3-1. Calm down. It's week 4. But I don't think that's the right approach here, because listen, week 1, 2, and 3, he did not play well. Somehow we won those games. Okay. And I remember saying to you on the last podcast, I said, if Jared Goff keeps playing the way that he's been playing, we're not going to win week 4, and we're going to struggle this season. And what happened? He struggled big time in week 4 because he was doing the same thing. There's guys open that he's missing. He's doing the same thing. He keeps trying to find Cooper Kupp on nearly every single play. He's panicking, which I'm not gonna, I'm gonna cut him some slack for that, because I get it, because he hasn't really had to deal with 3 defensive linemen in his face in 4 seconds, really at all, other than this season. So that's something new for him, I think. But we can't say, oh, it's rust anymore, right? When he played poorly week 1 and 2, a lot of people said, oh, he's rusty. He didn't play in the preseason, whatever. Okay. Then week 3 came around. Some people said that. Some people said, we're not going to worry yet. Now week 4 came around, guys, and we just, lost to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is a team that we are significantly more talented than. So when we're criticizing some of the play of our favorite players, we're not trying to say that they suck or we hate them or they're bad, football players. We're literally saying the opposite. We're saying that we're recognizing that our team is very talented. We're recognizing Jared Goff is extremely talented, but he's not playing like it. That's a very different thing than calling somebody out for being a bad player. So when I get on Twitter, I get on social media, you can come at me all you want for saying that I'm being quote unquote negative. When I'm really not being negative, I'm just trying to point out what, Jake and I's opinions are and why we think things are happening and what we think can be done to fix them. I mean, that's kind of what you do on a podcast. So I'm going to get into that. Hopefully that clarified everything for whoever needed that clarified. But then I'll just say this really quick and then I'll give it to Jake. Jared Goff, I think is either in his head for whatever reason. He came into this season in his head. You can say it's because he lost a Super Bowl, and that, ever since the Super Bowl, a lot of people are saying that people have kind of figured out, quote unquote, the Rams offense and that he's in his head about it and he's uncomfortable. Or he's making, again, this kind of goes back to Jared being in his head, mental mistakes, which is what I think it is. I think he's just making a lot of mental mistakes. Not throwing to where the receivers are, not seeing wide open receivers, holding on to the ball too long. All of that to me signifies a mental mistake. I don't think that he's doing those things because he's incapable of making the big plays, because he is. We've seen it all the time. So that's why it's so frustrating, because it's almost like, dude, get out of your head. And again, it's easy for us to say because we're not the ones on the field, but it's like, come on, just do your thing. I get it. I get that, our offensive line is giving you essentially zero help, but just do your thing, go out there, do what you did all last season, the best that you can. Again, like I said, the team around him isn't necessarily supporting him as well as they were last season, but just do it. And that's all I'm saying is just concerning that the little things he's not fixing. I'm not saying he's not talented. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not, screaming and whining and complaining, like some people are like, oh, we gave him all this money and look at how he's playing. But I'm more saying, yeah, we gave him all this money and look how he's playing. How are we going to fix it? Now, I rambled, but Jake, I'll let you give your thoughts on that.
No, I agree with you. It kind of goes back to what we were saying. You wouldn't be annoyed if you knew, I said this on Facebook Live, and I was, not trying to completely crap all over Case Keenum, but Rams fans knew it was like there was a limited. Case Keenum is a limited quarterback. Like, he can get you some wins. He's a high effort player. Somebody that really can sometimes surprise you, like you saw in the playoffs. But Case Keenum, at the end of the day, does not have the 6'5" frame of Jared Goff or 6'4" frame of Jared Goff. He doesn't have the arm talent. He doesn't have the arm strength. He's not as much of a facilitator, and he's just not as good as Jared Goff. So when Case Keenum was the sheriff in town, I always tempered my expectations. Even when the Rams were 3-1 in 2016, I never was like, Case Keenum can lead us to the promised land. Now, Jared Goff has already shown you he can go to the Super Bowl with this team. He was honestly, like, for what he dealt with at the Superdome and everything we heard all week, what he was able to do in the AFC title game was incredible. And he wasn't even all that great, but he made the plays he had to make to send the Rams to the Super Bowl. Then I go to the Super Bowl, and now you're talking about somebody that looked rattled, and albeit he looked rattled, but he still put the ball right on the money to Brandon Cooks to tie the game. He still made that throw, and then the next play was an interception. And what's interesting about that is these miscues, these deep ball miscues or these missed touchdowns, the next plays seem to always come down to, being turnovers. You look at two instances in this game. Jared misses Gerald Everett. I believe he, had a turnover on that drive. And then there was a turnover again when Jared missed a wide open Brandon Cooks. I just think, obviously, if you have those two touchdowns and, You put the ball on the money like you've shown in the past. You don't have those 2 interceptions, and I mean the game's completely different. There was just a lot of that, and I think, just looking at obviously what Jared Goff is capable of, and just the fact that he's been a facilitator in the past, going back to California. I mean, again, I mentioned this, Chase Hansen and Kenny Lawler and Bryce Triggs and Steven Anderson. He was getting everybody involved. And with the Rams, it was less about, the Cooper Kupp show today. So I guess that, that was that I felt good about. I mean, obviously you want Kupp to get his targets, but I felt like this was, more so he was spreading the ball around. It was just that, he was missing guys that were open. He was holding on the ball too long. He was throwing off his back foot, getting into those, mechanical issues that really plague his accuracy. Anytime you're a quarterback and you're kind of fading away like that, you're losing all your power. You're not driving. You're not stepping into your throw. And we saw so many passes on Sunday where Goff bounced them. And you can't have that. So, I think, that's a genuine concern. Goff's inconsistencies with his mechanics. And that's always been a concern for me. Another concern is obviously the offensive line. Because if this doesn't get better, whether it's fair or not, we're not talking about whether it's fair. Goff has to be able to overcome this, and if he can't, then this season is going to go in the toilet pretty quickly. And the thing is, my biggest issue with the offense has nothing to do with Jared Goff or the receivers or offensive line. I mean, the receivers were incredible, but my biggest issue is Todd Gurley on 5 carries has 2 touchdowns. Why is Todd Gurley only getting 5 carries? Okay, I think the Rams have totally lost their way. I think Sean McVay has lost his way with the play calling. And I'm not saying he can't get it back, because I'm a huge Sean McVay fan. I believe he will, or he can. But first off, why is Darrell Henderson not out there? Why not try and mix things up? They're becoming a very predictable offense. They're hoping guys are open and Goff is hitting them. They run a jet sweep here and there. They run, trips formation. They run bunches formation. I mean, they ran a bunches formation on 4th down, and there was nobody in the backfield, and it was so predictable that, Tampa Bay didn't even, buy it, and they just came right at Goff and they killed him. But I mean, this is the issue here. It's lack of creativity from somebody that has been a mastermind for creativity. It's somebody that is just completely losing control of the flow of the game. 11 carries. I don't care how bad this offensive line is. You can't just abandon the run 11 carries in. Todd Gurley had 5 carries for 16 yards and 2 touchdowns. His longest carry was 13 yards. So he wasn't running the ball all that well. But, I just think if your offense is kind of like a modified West Coast offense that is very, very much leaning on the play action pass, you can't run play action without establishing the run. And, I honestly have to say, I think it's overblown what the offensive line is doing in the run game. And I don't think it's fair to say the offensive line's terrible in run blocking when do the Rams run the football? The Rams don't start the game off running the football. It was 14 of 16 passes, 14 of 16 plays. The first 16 plays, I believe 14 of them were pass plays. 2 of them were run plays to Malcolm Brown. That's how you started off the game. So there's no game flow. There's no game management. There's no balance. And what that does is it puts extreme amount of pressure. So if Goff was already struggling, if Goff already didn't have the protection, if Goff is already in his head, well, guess what? When he throws 68 times in a losing effort, that's only going to get worse. So, the ball has to start being run. It has to be run by the best running back in the National Football League in Todd Gurley. He proved that. 2 touchdowns on 5 carries. He got the job done. He was automatic in the red zone. I mean, you saw that one run he had for 13 yards that went for the score. He broke through multiple tackles. I'm so tired of hearing, well, this isn't the Todd Gurley that I know. No. I'll tell you right now, it's overblown. Todd is fine. He won't be Frank Gore because he's not going to play till he's 36, and that's okay. Todd won't last as long as the rest of the running backs, and that's kind of sad, but that's okay. Todd right now can play, and you've seen it, and he continues to show it. So I don't understand why we continue to drive this stupid crap narrative that Todd Gurley is gone when it's not Todd Gurley's fault he's getting 5 carries in a game that is absolutely meaningful. At no point did the Rams deserve to win this game. They were down 21-0. They came back, and he's the one getting 5 carries. You could say all you want, oh, well, they're down 21-0. He was taken out of the game. And even so, I got to credit Sean McVay in a sense, because Sean McVay got Todd Gurley involved out of the passing game after I was clamoring for that the last episode. And, of course, Gerald Everett. But I'll say this. You saw Malcolm Brown week 1. If you want to, I'm not buying they're limiting Todd Gurley's workload. I just think they honestly have lost their way. They're not the Rams that had the crazy thing about them was that they were so balanced. They had a balanced passing attack, a balanced run game that you couldn't stop. They have completely gone away from that, and they have now put all the pressure on Jared Goff. Again, whether you are on Team Goff or not, it is not fair to trot a guy out there and throw 68 passes in a losing effort. He didn't need to. That never should have been the case. Had they run the ball and had they, controlled the game a little bit more, this game probably doesn't end up being 55-40. And obviously the defense did them no favors, but again, if you want to say that it's because they're managing Todd Gurley, then why is Malcolm Brown getting 5 carries? Why is Cooper Kupp getting 4 less carries than the leading rusher on the day? That's insane. Why is Darrell Henderson not out there? There's questions that are fair to ask. And I think, this Thursday, it now becomes a pivotal game on the road in a hostile environment in Seattle. You have to win that game. And then you have to win next week against the 49ers, who, guess what? For the first time in Sean McVay's career as the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, the Rams are now no longer in first place in the NFC West. It's actually the 49ers, albeit they had the bye, but now those 2 games become crucial. And, I'm not going to say this could have easily been avoided, but running the ball 11 times total in a game is the easiest way to lose a game.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Todd Gurley is one of the, most talented running backs in the NFL. And I understand that there's been a concern about his knee. I don't think, it doesn't sound like it's been as big of a deal. The knee has been as big of a deal as people thought it was going to be. But then it's like you see him barely participating or being put in a football game. And you're like, what's happening? Why isn't he running the ball more? Why aren't we running the ball more in general? Like you said, we spent a 3rd round pick on Darrell Henderson. Where's that guy? So it is, I think I tend to agree with you that it just seems like the play calling, it is not what it used to be. It's a little suspect. I hope that they can get it together by Thursday, because it is not going to be easy. Seattle is a very good team. It is not an easy place to be an opponent in their stadium at CenturyLink up in Seattle either. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be a very, very hard game to win. It would be a hard game to win if we were playing well. It's going to be even harder now that we're not playing well. So we just have to hope that they're fixing it, they're fixing it quick. I think we did a good job of kind of, we talked about the defense at first, we talked about the offense, we talked about everything, that we could talk about, but I still think that, in closing, it's just so important to point out the fact that, while week 4, we should be pretty established, with our game, we're not, but it is still only, we're playing week 5 on Thursday because we have a short week, but there is still time left in the season. We're lucky, we're 3-1, that we could have a much worse record. So, we're not panicking, but we're just saying, as we've been saying, that these little things have to be fixed and corrected, because if they're not, we're just going to continue to go downhill all season. And that's what we've been worried about. That's what we watched in week 4. But I really hope that week 4 was just a fluke. Like I said, my prediction for the Rams was 13-3, because I think that there's always games that you should win, or games where things just go wrong for whatever bizarre reason. And I think that was one of those games. So I just think that if the Rams can get it together and they can just find their identity as a team and just kind of get back to what they did last season, and just not panic so much and just not, be more self-aware and just do their jobs, quoting Bill Belichick there, who I know we don't like, but I just had to throw that in there. I think that it will be better. So we'll see. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm panicking more than I'm just like disappointed in the way we've been playing, but I'm also hopeful because I do think we can turn it around soon. But if we go in there, I'll say this, if we go in there, and this is literally, I'm repeating what I said last podcast, but if we go in there Thursday and we play like we did week 4, not only are we going to lose, we're going to lose by a lot more. And I think it's going to be harder to come back from because we're playing a division rival. We're playing them on the road. And I think just for team morale, I really think that if we went in there Thursday night into Seattle and we won, it'd be really, really good for the team and just the overall mood and the Rams' confidence.
I totally agree with you. And I think you have to take away the fact that while the Rams came back, they were also at home. So, you have that road element that you alluded to. And, I think it's obviously a really important game. It sounds to me like there's going to be 2 back-to-back primetime games as the Rams are looking to be flexed with the 49ers. And that's going to be at the Coliseum, so that'll be a blast. But, the 49ers-Rams game at the Coliseum, that looks like it's going to be flexed to an 8:15 start time Sunday Night Football, and due to the fact that it's the 49ers and the Chargers on. So there's already been numerous people talking about that because that's going to be a huge game if the Rams win. They're 4-1 heading to that game. If the 49ers win this week, they're 4-0. So that's that game has a lot of implications and the early implications in the division. And then, one thing I got to throw out there that no one's talking about, how about the fact that the Rams, the teams that they beat, the Panthers, who people were saying weren't that good, it wasn't that big of a deal, they got that road win. It's all about the W's in this league because the Panthers, by the way, they went and they beat Houston, I believe, on the road. They beat Houston with their second-year quarterback in Kyle Allen, and who is now 2-0 with the Carolina Panthers. So it looks like after that loss to the Rams, they found their way, and it kind of goes to show the Rams played a decent Panthers team, and then the next game, the easy win that the Rams had, the easy win that all the sports talk people were saying against the Saints, they've now gone on and won 2 straight against Seattle and Dallas. Seattle on the road and at home against Dallas. So those are 2 huge wins. And then the Browns. Oh, well, the Browns, that wasn't a good, all their secondary was out. They're not good. That wasn't a good win. The Rams should have blown them out. Well, guess what? The Rams went into Cleveland and they beat the Browns and they held them off at the last second. The Browns went into Baltimore and embarrassed the Ravens. They put up 40 points. 40 points. Yeah. And they won 40-25 against the Ravens on the road. So maybe, just maybe, we're getting a little, worried because the Rams don't lose very often with Sean McVay. But at the same time, maybe, just maybe, the Rams are a lot better than people are giving credit for because they beat 3 good teams early in the schedule and they lost to a team that, hey, I mentioned it on the show and we said a blowout, so we were wrong. I'll be the first one to tell people when I'm wrong. But the Buccaneers were coming off a demoralizing loss that changed the course of 2 teams, depending on how they were going to let them. So if the Buccaneers came out flat, then that loss to Daniel Jones and the Giants was going to be crippling for their season. However, they didn't let that happen, and they came into LA in, an environment that, again, like coming from, Florida to LA, that's kind of a long trip. and they beat the Rams in their house, and the Giants have now won 2 straight. So, that game was very interesting because it kind of woke the Giants up, and it looks like it woke up Tampa Bay. And, you can say what you want, but I do think that had something to do with it. The Rams got a team that was desperate, and desperate teams in the NFL are terrifying. So, that's really all I had to say left. Just again, the Rams, they absolutely have to win against Seattle. This is a team that's going to the playoffs. I'm not buying into all that talk, how they're going to fall off the wagon. I know it would make a lot of sense and help a lot of people carry it, that crazy narrative, the Super Bowl hangover. But I'll say this, they mentioned on the telecast, the Rams would have been the first team since the Packers to lose the Super Bowl and then the next year go 4-0. So for whatever reason, history always tends to repeat itself. This had never happened. But aside from that, this had never happened where a team had lost the Super Bowl and gone 4-0. So it's like the Rams repeated history in a sense. And it's weird, but it's only happened to one team, and that was the Packers, I believe, with Brett Favre. So, that's also something to keep in mind. Very interesting. And lastly, a loss this early in the year could really bode well. The Rams went 8-0 last year to start. They lost to the Saints in a game that was still kind of close. So I don't think they ever, took that as like a humble pie the way they're going to take this game. And you saw it down the stretch. They got, eviscerated by the Chicago Bears defense and, the Eagles. And sometimes, and as this podcast has gone on, guys, you learn more in your losses than your wins. So this could be really big for the Rams. This could be the thing that finally, maybe you make that personnel change you were too afraid to make. Maybe you go out and make that trade. I don't know. But I'm definitely excited because, it's a week-to-week thing in the NFL, and the Rams at least deserve the opportunity to make up for it Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, and we do have a short week, obviously, with the Rams playing Thursday night. So we will try and get our preview of the Rams at Seahawks out either tomorrow night or Wednesday night. And then obviously, after that game, we'll have our recap as always. So, short weeks, players don't like them, of course, but, it's sure fun as a fan to be able to watch your team and then, only have to wait a few days to watch them again. So we're certainly excited for Thursday night. And we will be hoping that, the Rams fix what they need to fix and go to Seattle and get a win.
100%, Alexis. Couldn't agree more. So that's going to do it for Jake Ellenbogen, Alexis Kraft. This has been the Downtown Rams podcast. It's been episode 245. If you like what you hear, again, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And enjoy your week. We'll be back on Wednesday and get you ready for that game. And, again, it's a good one. So also, before we leave, if you are interested on our social media, we actually were reached out to by the Rams. They're having a really cool watch party. So before you guys go, if you're interested in that, you can find it on our social media. Basically, it's going to take place at the SoFi Stadium Premier Center. It's going to be an inside stadium scoop. You're going to get a bunch of details on season tickets and PSLs and all of that good stuff. And then you're going to be able to watch the Rams with a bunch of Rams fans. It's 4:30 to 9 p.m. Pacific time for the party. And it should be a lot of fun. They're going to just, serve food and all of that. If you want to RSVP, because it is RSVP only, feel free to shoot an email to jdavis@lased.com. That's jdavis@lased.com. Thanks so much, guys, and take care.